Hello, my name is Amanda Patrice. Thank you so much for being with me here today. I love sharing my aha moments with other people, and I hope that in doing so, I'm able to help you find some ahas of your own. Today I'm going to share one of my very favorite ways to get in better touch with yourself and what you want so that you can start living with more alignment and peace in your everyday life. And I just want to warn you right now that this is deceptively simple. I know when I first started pursuing self-development, I was really looking for like quick fixes, overnight results, and I just wanted everything fixed like stat. And I just wasn't interested in those little micro steps like changing my mindset or developing new habits or more self-awareness. And I was just downright resistant to anything that seemed like it would take a long time. And I just didn't quite respect the fact that I had to really look at myself and look inward and change myself from within, as opposed to manipulating and forcing and always trying to change things outside of myself. And that might seem obvious. You might be sitting there thinking like, well, duh, but at the time I was really in survival mode. I had convinced myself that I had no time. I really didn't have a lot of energy. And I was so busy putting out fires that I wasn't living with any kind of intention, let alone self-awareness. And I just wanted someone to come and fix me. So I started reading a lot of books. I was listening to lots of podcasts. I organized my house like a million times because that's what you do, right? And I just still wasn't finding any peace. I wasn't finding any clarity. And now I was actually overwhelmed because I had this huge wealth of knowledge that I was amassing that I wasn't really doing anything with. And it took me a while, but I finally started realizing and accepting the fact that I had to get in better touch with myself and who I was and develop more self-awareness if I was gonna get anywhere. So I finally embraced journaling, and it's really so simple. I know, I get it, but it is the fastest, most effective way I was able to get from survival mode to a feeling of calm and peace. So I totally get why journaling brings up so much resistance. We don't have time, we've done it before, and we didn't really find it to be super profound or helpful. It's just a pain in the ass sometimes. I've totally had all those thoughts, and I'd been told for so many years that I should be journaling, and I just never really stopped to wonder why I was resisting it and ponder, what I could do to make it work for me. There's that survival mode, lack of self-awareness, by the way. So what changed? Well, mindfulness kind of started picking up speed and becoming more mainstream, and more studies about meditation and self-development started emerging. And I realized that looking inward and becoming more self-aware wasn't just something that I was lacking since birth. It was actually something that I could practice and cultivate and actively create in my life. But the big shift happened actually when I started working with my own life coach that made journaling a cornerstone of her whole program. And I was finally willing to accept it for the amazing tool that it was and start finding a way to implement it into my life. And I'm not joking, it was immediately impactful. And I know that sounds kind of dramatic, but I was just suddenly aware of what I was thinking and who I was. And I was finally able to discern what was really me and what was just drivel kind of being projected onto me from the outside world. And I was more self-aware, I was more confident, and I was increasingly more in touch with my intuition, which I actually would have argued I didn't have any of before I started journaling. And with that self-awareness, I was able to pinpoint where my resistance was coming from, what I'd been doing wrong, and it really helped me create a practice that works for me and my super full life. And that is what I'll be sharing with you today. Tips and tools so that you can actually start a journaling habit that has an impact on your life. But first I'm going to ramble on for a few more minutes just to convince you about why you should journal, in case I haven't done that yet. First off, the most basic thing journaling can give you is more clarity, and that is not to be underestimated. With more clarity, decisions are easier to make, goals are easier to achieve, and you can take more effective steps towards the life that you want to live. I know that for me, when I first started journaling, I went from totally scatterbrained to way more centered and self-aware and intentional pretty much right out of the gate. It was amazing. The act of journaling uses all 5 senses and helps you become more self-aware, thus helping you be really grounded in the present moment and increasing mindfulness, which we know is a big thing right now. It increases emotional intelligence by helping you process your feelings, understanding yourself, those around you, basically whatever the world throws at you, and helps you increase your empathy. It improves communication skills by helping you understand yourself, but also articulate your thoughts way better. It lowers stress and anxiety by offering an emotional release, a creative outlet, and a safe place to express yourself. And my very favorite reason, though, to journal is because it helps me get in touch with my inner wisdom and my intuition. Our brains are just so bombarded with stimulus all day long. It can be virtually impossible to really find your true selves amidst all the clutter. The world is constantly telling you how to feel and what to think with advertisements. Social media is causing us to measure our self-worth by comparing ourselves to others as opposed to finding it from within. People are just constantly projecting themselves onto you all day long. We don't eat very healthy. We're always on our phones. We're always just busy, busy, busy. And we just don't take the time to sit with our thoughts. I mean, even if you meditate or have some kind of practice where you have some alone time, you tend to end that practice with a nice little pat on your back, and then you just re-immerse yourself into crazy life as usual. And it's not that those things aren't incredibly helpful. It's just that we don't sit down very often to stop and think about how we feel. And even if we talk about it with like other friends or family to kind of organize our thoughts or talk it out, we could still be seeking validation or adopting the thoughts of other people. It's really all about getting to know yourself by yourself. So before I started journaling regularly, I had just kind of resigned to the fact that I was flighty and not very self-aware, and I didn't trust myself at all. I really didn't even know who I was. And I never really gave myself time to work out my own thoughts and my own feelings so I could show up in the world confidently and authentically. And if I did take the risk and put myself out there and I was met with any kind of judgment, I would retreat and hide, or I would be easily swayed because I just wasn't grounded in who I was and what I thought. Or worse than that, I was defensive or combative because I was just easily disempowered. Now that I have a better understanding of who I am, I just show up in the world way differently. I have more confidence, I'm more peaceful, I get rattled a lot less easily, and I just feel a greater sense of ease. And I love that. It feels really awesome. So, yay, you're convinced now, you can't wait to journal. It really is as simple as picking up a pen and finding a piece of paper and getting started. But I'm willing to bet that, like me, you are about to complicate it. I'm here to help you skip all the pitfalls and help you get started on creating a journaling habit that really works for you and has an immediate impact on your life. Some of these things might be exactly what you needed to hear. Some things might make you question my sanity a little bit, but either way, I hope to help you think about where you are, where you're coming from, and what you can do so that you can really get a good journaling habit going for you. So the number one thing that I had to really get past in order to create a good habit of journaling was that it didn't have to look pretty. Becoming more self-aware can be messy, and I've always been the creative type that likes things to look pretty and tidy. I have good penmanship, I love articulating myself and spending time on semantics, and I loved the notion of a journal entry with a nice beginning, middle, and end, and this lovely little conclusion tied up with a bow. And combine that with the fact that I don't like confrontation and have made it like a habit to avoid my negative thoughts to the point of like really suppressing my true feelings and hiding from emotions instead of really feeling them. And my journal entries were just a bunch of fluff, and they rarely had anything to do with true self-expression. Not helpful when it comes to a journal, right? So when I embraced the fact that journaling didn't have to be a form of art, I was really able to see that sometimes the messiest entries were the best ones, and it was just so much easier to pick up my journal. I was way more inclined to start it because I didn't have all these like rules and pretense and things attached to it that made it just a pain in the butt. The second thing I had to realize was that my negative thoughts existed whether I wrote them down or not. I feel like we've all been bombarded with memes and quotes about being positive over the years. And yeah, that's great, but it's almost as if we're being bullied into hiding anything that doesn't make you think of like lollipops and sunshine. And as a result, I started suppressing my negative emotions, which is bad enough in and of itself, but I also developed this crazy notion that by writing my crappy thoughts down, I made them like more real, or like I was jinxing myself, or like inviting bad things to happen. I had to literally give myself permission to write my ugly thoughts down. I had to face the fact that I wasn't always a big ball of sunshine, and that was normal and totally okay. And as I started really being more vulnerable and honest in my journal, I found that the opposite of my fear was actually true. When I wrote my ugliness down, it didn't make my negative thoughts more real. It actually helped me let them go. It took the power away from them. So many of the shitty things in our heads are just our brains, like running wild and thinking in loops. Our thoughts are not always true, and our thoughts are not us. We are not our thoughts. But if we don't write them down, process them, and get that BS out of our heads, then it can start really wreaking havoc on our life. We don't want those thoughts in our brain's driver's seats. You know, that's when we end up like binging on Netflix, or running up our credit card, or self-sabotaging in different ways, or getting into fights. And we don't want that to happen. I always say that our negative thoughts that we don't process become our baggage. And our baggage can really easily run our lives if we're not careful. So the third thing I had to embrace was the fact that my journals are not my legacy. And what I mean by that is I had this like sneaky little idea that my journal entries had to be these like profound, insightful, transformative bits of wisdom that I could look back on for like years to come. And I couldn't get this vision of someone finding my journals in an old moldy trunk in some attic, you know, way off in the distant future, after which they would be like dissected and judged and studied by like my great grandchildren. And that was obviously a terrifying thought. Nobody wants their journals read. And it probably didn't help that my dad used to sneak into my room and read my letters that I would write to my friends back and forth in high school. I would be mortified to read those letters, so you can imagine the kind of impact it made on me to know that my dad was reading those letters. So that didn't help. And this might be my own personal brand of crazy, I don't know, but I've always had this unshakable feeling of being watched. Who's watching me has always changed over the years. It's been God, ghosts, angels, spirit guides, whatever. But it resulted in me censoring myself all the time, like even when I was alone. And I'd felt this way for so long that I never even really questioned it. It wasn't even really on my radar. And it wasn't until I journaled more often and kind of realized that there was this like fear of having them read that I was able to kind of unpack it. And I concluded that if some higher power was in fact reading over my shoulder as I was writing journal entries, they were pretty damn powerful and probably knew what I was thinking anyways, right? So what was the point? And I had to choose to believe that whatever or whoever was spying on me was benevolent and loved me and wouldn't judge me, so that I could just carry on. But that might just be me, I don't know. But anyways, I had to create a system that makes me feel 100% safe to be candid in my journals. The most obvious thing, of course, is that I don't leave my journals lying around, not for anyone to see or pick up. But I also had to have a conversation with my husband and kind of stress the importance of my journal's privacy. And I had to tell him that if anything ever happened to me, that my journals were just to be destroyed. They're not supposed to be, read by him. I don't want them passed on to my kids. That's what like Instagram and photo albums and stuff are for, right? Just to get rid of them. And luckily I feel really safe and trusting with my husband, so I'm not worried about it. But if I ever felt like my journals were not safe or like they might be read, then you can bet I would find a way to lock them down, or I would burn them or something, I don't know. Because once you really start writing uncensored and getting all that BS out of your head, it is too amazing and I don't want to go back. So do what you have to do to keep your journals safe and don't censor yourself. These journals are just for you. They're not for anybody else. So the fourth thing I had to embrace was the brain dump method of journaling. You can call it stream of consciousness, free writing, thought downloading, whatever. Basically though, it's just the easiest form of journaling. And for me, the most direct way to get in touch with myself and my true thoughts. So what you do is you write down whatever pops into your head and you don't stop. And it's really that simple. But even after I had a logical understanding of what to do, I still couldn't quite do it. I would try and I'd go through the motions, but I would realize I was still kind of writing for the end result instead of letting the process be where the magic was. So I had to really, really let go of the expectation that my journal entries had to be full of wisdom and like big insight, because I wasn't in a position, one, to write those kind of journal entries. I was a mess, I needed to get BS out of my head. I didn't have all these profound things to share. But I had to practice, and I had to let go of what I thought journaling was supposed to be. And now I'm a pro, but you're probably not going to get it right away. It's going to take some practice. But here is the general idea behind the brain dump. You set a designated amount of time, even if it's just 3 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever, it's all helpful. And you start just writing. You can say hello or dear diary or whatever. And you just write and you write and you write, and you don't stop until the timer goes off. Don't worry about spelling. Don't worry about punctuation. Don't even worry about making sense. Your brain can go from one thought to the next with no coherence in between. It's okay. It's all about writing stuff down without judging and without thinking. In fact, the less you think about what you're writing, the better, because the point here is to get past your monkey brain and past all the clutter and past all the input from the world so that you can get to your true self. So you can really let your inner voice have the stage for a moment. And you'll probably write really quickly. Your handwriting will probably look awful. I write really big sometimes when I really get on a roll. It's okay. Just let it all happen. Write however you need to so that you can really keep up with your thoughts. So if you don't know what to write, then just write. I don't know what to write. If you think this is stupid, then write it down. It's okay. Eventually, I promise, the words will start flowing. It may click right away. You may have to take a few tries. Maybe it worked great yesterday, but today you have like a mental block. It's okay. Just keep at it. Don't judge it. Don't complicate it. If you find that you've opened the floodgates though, and you just keep writing and writing and writing, and the timer goes off and you're just not done, then by all means, keep going. The timer is really just to make sure that you start writing and that you go long enough. So ignore it if you need to. And again, I have to stress, please, 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 don't judge what you're writing. So much of what is in our heads is just BS. It's not us. Our thoughts are not always true. And that's why you have to get it out. So much of the journaling process is about purging. And once you've cleaned it out, all the good stuff can start coming out. And that's the point. So number 5, the fifth thing I had to learn is that consistency is key. And gosh, this brought up a lot of resistance to me because I once read this book that was like All you need to create a sacred space, get a fancy journal, get just the right pen, light a candle, rigidly schedule your journaling for every day to make sure it's a good, strong habit. And if that's your jam, then all power to you. I resisted that. I do not like schedules. Routine can be like pulling teeth for me. So I intend to journal in the morning. And if that doesn't work out, then I make time later. And if it still doesn't work out, I know that because I love journaling and I really respect its place in my life, I'm gonna make time for it. It's really important to me. So I've made my practice flexible, and I have to remember that it's all about progress, not perfection. It doesn't have to be perfect. I don't have to do it at the same time every day, but I do have to do it. I just try to make sure I don't go more than a few days without journaling. And just don't beat yourself up. Don't complicate the process. Don't self-sabotage by putting all these rules and regulations around the whole thing. And just do it as often as possible. Love it. Let it really become a part of your life that you can't live without. And trust me, you're not going to let it go. So put it into your life, make it fit, and let it work. It's really super worth it, I promise. So number 6, the final thing I had to really embrace was to stop making excuses. One of the best parts about journaling is just how easy it is. So don't make it hard. You don't need to have this like special day where you go to Barnes & Noble, you get the perfect latte, and you like meditate in the journal section to find the perfect one. Trust me, I love using perfectionism as a way and reason to procrastinate. But don't fall into that trap. Just grab some paper, a pen, and get started. It doesn't have to be special. I'd actually even argue that the fancy journals may hinder the process. When you're really on a roll and you're just burning through page after expensive page and you're writing all huge and you're dropping F-bombs, do you really want your subconscious to be a little voice in the background saying, hey, wait, this was an expensive journal, maybe you should rein it in a little bit? No, you don't want that. So maybe that's not you, but definitely be aware of that. I personally love these composition journals. They're super easy to find. They're $2 at Target, so I can burn through them and I don't care. And I can have them everywhere. I have one in my car, one in my desk, one at my by my bed, so that if I ever have anything that I need to get out of my head, I can do it really easily. Plus, they don't scream like, hey, I'm a journal, you should totally read me, when Amanda has her back turned. So that's a bonus. And so just grab some paper, get started, don't complicate it. And that's it, really. It can be easy. It can make a big difference in your life, I promise. You just got to get started and let go of some stuff and not judge the process. There are a few other little tips I'd like to add, though. So when I really started brain dumping and I would just go through page after page after page, eventually, every once in a while, I would come up with something absolutely amazing. And I'd want to go back to it or expand on it or, at least, unpack it a little bit. So I decided that I would start using these handy little tabs. They're super cheap. I've even gotten a bit type A on it and I color code them according to the category the AHA falls into. But you may just want to have a highlighter handy so you can highlight the really profound thoughts. I know I've heard of only writing in the right side of your journal instead of the left, so that the left is nice and open and available for you to work through some really profound thoughts if you'd like. The point is, as you go through this process, you're going to find little ways to make it your own, make it really work for you. And that's the best part of journaling, is that it's such a personal process. So another thing is, once you really start to click with free writing and it becomes a little more second nature to you, then add some journal prompts or exercises. I love those so much. If I'm ever confused about what to write, or if I'm ever just kind of wanting to like expand on something or look at something specific, you can grab a journal prompt. Or I like to set intentions before I start journaling. So I'll, set an intention, or I'll literally write a question down in my journal, and then I'll open the floodgates. And sometimes I'll go off on a tangent. Sometimes what I end up writing about has nothing to do with what I intended, but that's okay. You really got to trust that what comes through your pen is what needed to be written. And you can always revisit that thought or that intention the next time you journal. I've included actually some of my very favorite writing exercises below, and they're really good for deepening self-awareness, shifting your mood, or cultivating more self-love or positive outlook. I've kept everything pretty positive and empowering. Our minds already kind of naturally tend to focus on struggles naturally, so I thought keeping it positive would be good here. Not because we want to avoid negative thoughts or feelings at all, but because whenever possible, it's nice to actively foster positive thoughts. So these exercises are actually a precursor to my alignment workshop. So if you want to get even more in touch with what you want out of life, and if you want some help with kind of making that shit happen, then you might want to check that out next. But in the meantime, get started, write some stuff down. Let me know how it goes. I really love hearing about how people have kind of made this process their own. I'd love to hear if it made an impact on you. I'd love to know what your roadblocks or struggles might have been, or if you had any cool tips or aha moments that you'd like to share. Let me know. Email me, send me a text, mention me on social media, I don't know, whatever. But let me know how you're doing. I'd really love to hear about it. And thank you so much for being here with me. Bye.